and welcome to Shit They Don't Tell You, a podcast.
Yes, that was actually the correct title of our podcast.
Is it called a podcast in the...
Shit They Don't Tell You.
It's called a podcast?
No, that's what it is, but it's not.
Yes.
Yes, good job.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Steve Green, and today I'm joined by my wife, Nikki Limo, as I usually am.
Yes, because I'm the co-host of this podcast.
But today, most importantly, shout out to, by the way, a lot of you out there, Melanie from JK, loves when we talk about this particular topic.
Thanks, Melanie.
She's one of our Patreon supporters. She's one of the JK Patreon supporters. By the way, nothing helps the show more than you guys being on the Patreon. Patreon.com/sticky.
STIKKI.
Helps out so much as we, deal with a world where advertisers are drying up.
They are drying up. Yet those advertisers, they need to put some lotion on their skin.
They need to move out of the state of Nevada, I'll tell you that.
That is...
It's pretty hot there in summer. No, so today, most importantly, we're talking about the UFO whistleblower as we have been discussing.
Yes.
His name is David Grouch. But most importantly, the things that Bob Lazar, right, in my opinion, the first whistleblower, discussed more than 30 years ago, and how those two things have lined up over the many decades since Bob Lazar broke this story.
I'm glad you're doing this topic because every time we mention Bob Lazar, there's always like a few people in the comments that are like, oh, he's a, phony, or,
quack.
He's a quack, instant turn off this podcast because Bob Lazar. But it's weird because for as much as people say that, there's a lot that he said way back when he didn't have to say anything, and it's lined up with things that are coming out now, as well as that he didn't make a dime off of any of that. So
far that we know, right? Like, as far as we know, he hasn't had a lavish lifestyle because of the ufology. Yes. Right? But
he never tried to be like an expert at a convention or anything like that.
Never changed his story.
That's why I like him.
I like him too. Look, we'll be honest with our biases. We like Bob Lazar.
Yeah, I am biased towards liking him.
I am too.
But it's because I don't see any signs of what would be a motivation to just be a scammer. Like, what does he get out of it?
I mean, look, you could argue, right, that he just wanted to fuck with everybody. And I get that. I'm a troll, right? I understand a level of a human being where you could get to where you're like, maybe if I mess with everybody. Yeah. And they're just going to believe me. Yeah. And they're going to carry my lie forward. I can see that.
Yeah, I guess
I can get there.
I know people like that, but he doesn't show any other signs of trollish behavior. Like, normally with that type of person, they can't. They just can't.
They can't help it.
You can't help it.
I can't help it.
You go to every single show and you're a troll. And there's a little smirk behind the eyes every time, and there's no smirk behind his eyes. So I don't know. I think that's not fair.
I think it's pretty good that he hasn't changed his story in 30 years. Although he did submit himself back then to multiple lie detector tests, and it was found to be inconclusive. Some of the lie detector tests came back that he was truthful. Some of them came back inconclusive. And so...
But none of them came back liar, liar, pants on fire.
Well, inconclusive kind of infers that, but it was never like just set in stone. And I honestly think, too, the subject matter made it so wild for anyone who wanted to remain credible in their field to just clear Bob Lazar and say, yeah, he's telling the truth about all this crazy shit.
I get the motives for people not like confirming him.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm a bad host right now. Bob Lazar came out in the 1980s and said that he had been part of a special program. So what they would do is they would basically take, scientists, and then in Bob Lazar's case, he was sort of like a physicist who got hired by, he claims, Los Alamos National Labs, where he met one of the biggest scientists like ever at the time, named Richard Teller, one of the many fathers of the atomic bomb, and I think his name is Edward Teller. Edward Teller tells him, like, hey, you built the rocket car, or Bob Lazar goes, hey, I built the rocket car from the newspaper that you're reading right now. And then Edward Teller goes, oh, you should get a hold of me. We could talk about some things. And then Mr. Teller gets Bob Lazar into this program, which, so coming from Los Alamos, he claims, he joins this program, and he is taken to Area 51. What they would do is they would take you on what they called the Janet flights. And they still exist. You see many flyers in Las Vegas talk about them. There are these planes, and they're like puddle jumper planes that are like small propeller planes with red stripes on them. They're called the Janet flights. And they take employees from here in Nevada, right? The Harry Reid now. It was McCarran.
You mean Las Vegas?
Yeah, Las Vegas.
Nevada's a pretty big state.
Thank you. To Groom Lake and the Area 51 facility, where he says that he was taken from there to buses with blacked out windows and then driven about 10 to 15 miles north of there, he thinks, to an area called S4, where he was taken to a facility that, it almost had like an incline to it. Like when you were outside of it, it has like a grade to it, and it's painted in such a way where it blends into the mountainside. That's what he claims, right? So then he goes in there and he says that the hangars were open. So there's a hangar that he enters, and there's like many, many bay doors going all the way down. And he says that he is treated to the site of like 9 different UFO craft. And he immediately just thinks, oh, this is what everyone thinks they've been seeing. Like whenever they're saying a bunch of bullshit about UFOs like and aliens.
People thought it was aliens, but it's actually just us. Yeah.
It's us. And then he actually, while he's walking by the most famous Bob Lazar craft, he calls it the sport model. It's the cleanest looking craft, the most complete craft, because some of the craft had in fact been destroyed. Like some of them looked like they had just taken impact from a projectile. And so this one was clean and working, but he didn't know at the time. So he just reaches his hand out and touches it. And he gets reprimanded immediately by the guard who was with him, who said, just keep walking forward and don't fucking look at things. But maybe that's like a way that they measure temperament or whatever. Or maybe it's a bullshit story. But he's always stuck with that. I saw this sport model craft. And then he says that he was treated to a bunch of different documents that talk about how, where these craft originated from. So now he's like, oh, this isn't us. This is from the Zeta Reticuli star system, which is like 15 light years away from where we're at, where there are planets that orbit a binary star, which means like 2 different stars, right? A binary star system. So far, we haven't seen any extrasolar planets in the Zeta Reticuli star system.
At that time?
No, so far we still haven't.
Oh, we haven't.
To date, we haven't. But that doesn't mean they're not there. We don't know. And so catching us up to now, Bob Lazar talked about the propulsion systems. He was shown that craft that he had touched earlier, lifting up off the ground, going 40 feet in the air, going as high as he could see it go, and then coming back down to the earth and moving at angles that make no sense and leaving no exhaust. There's no wind going through it. He's around it. So he's like, this doesn't make any sense for our current physics model. He said there was a static charge when the craft was turned on and then lifted, and then that sound went away. And then it's completely silent. Like, so what's the engine, right? Like, that's the confusing part for his story. Like, it's very weird. And then he says it moves in such a way using these things called gravity waves, where it kind of the belly of the craft turns towards where it wants to go, and then it is almost sucked there, like at incredible rates of speed using gravity waves. So this is all stuff he's talking about in the 80s.
Yeah, and it uses an element that we didn't have back then,
called element 115. Now you could have predicted that something like element 115 could exist because the elements, the way that they register them on the periodic table, you could have just said like, well, eventually we'll get to 115. Right? But you don't know that they could synthesize a super heavy amount of 115 for a significant amount of time. Because what they do is they throw all these charged particles together, right? In these huge hadron colliders, they just shove them together and they see what lasts. And element 115 has actually had a staying power that has actually blown scientific minds. And it is an ultra heavy element, but it should be because it's element 115 on the periodic table.
Right, but didn't they not have a stable isotope for it?
They didn't, and now they do.
Oh, okay.
That's correct. So that's the biggest advancement. But, a cynic could argue they would have gotten there anyway, but that's not really true because not all these elements have been synthesized.
Right. And why would he, if it's going to get there anyway, why would he choose something that could be proven false?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. So now let's talk about Mr. David Grusch, right? A former intelligence official who's come forward and basically said, like, hey, he is, by the way, the highest level person that's ever come out and given us the goods on this topic.
Yeah.
And he is staking his reputation, and there has been some pushback. So this past week, the government leaked his medical records saying that he basically flunked a psych test and was like lingering with his security clearance while being like basically a crazy person.
Whatever.
Leaking his medical records.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we don't know what's true or what's not true, but that is the current smear against Mr. Grusch coming out on this topic.
Sure.
And there is a weird undercurrent over the many, many decades that this topic has existed in our zeitgeist, where military officials are just not going to talk about it. Mm-hmm. They're just not going to say anything. John fucking Glenn, he went to space.
Yeah.
He said nobody talked to him about a topic more that were in the Navy or Air Force than this particular topic. He said people were kept on beating down the door and like he's credible. So like, hey, can I talk to you about this topic? And he said this should be investigated. And, I just find it hard to believe that, if you don't want something to get out, you don't create a culture where if you even leak anything, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And so that has permeated throughout the years, right? There was a government program called Project Blue Book where they looked into claims of UFO sightings. And guess what? Project Blue Book said, we looked into all these sightings and we found nothing credible about any of this shit, right? That was like their, the cover sheet for the facts that they sent out to the media.
Yeah.
Right. But let's talk about Mr. Grusch. So he has come forward. He's saying in a famous News Nation interview that we covered on this show, and you can check out that episode if you like. He says, we have been retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft, if you will, non-human exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed. He says that the U.S. is in possession of quite a number of these non-human vehicles. And if you go back to what Bob Lazar says, he's standing in a hangar and he says that 9 spacecraft of unknown origin, looking unlike anything he's ever seen before, were there. Mm-hmm. So Bob Lazar talking about a piece of news that a military official 30 years in the future confirms as true. Right. Wild. If he's making something up.
Yeah.
I got to say, it's pretty damn good. So another thing, right? So this is Bob Lazar. The craft that I worked on, when it's going to travel a long distance, it sort of operates in a way where it puts its belly to the target and then brings all of the amplifiers, the gravity amplifiers, to power. And, it sort of shoots off in that direction. It doesn't fly as it would in a science fiction movie. It flies with the belly, the bottom, forward. And if you fast forward to now, you have Jeremy Corbell, the documentarian who actually helped break the David Fravor gimbal video. If you remember, we've talked about this many times, but he's part of the Black Aces in the Navy, and he's flying a jet, and he sees this gimbal UFO. And I say gimbal because it's moving like a gimbal. Like, yeah. If you have a gimbal that's holding like a tripod with a gimbal on it, you can't believe that it can kind of maintain its like
the stability
yeah. while against certain forces. Like there's almost something else behind it. And so yeah, this is a quote from Jeremy Corbell. He says, in the gimbal video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration. And so we have a craft without rotors, without heat signatures, without plumes, without tail fins, certainly no tail number, moving in a way that is counterintuitive to our aeronautics. When Bob saw it, Bob Lazar, he said it had to be a gravity-propelled craft and that it does mimic the propulsion system that he had described. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk to, again, zooming back to now, you talk to David Fravor, Navy pilot for the Black Aces. He says he doesn't believe that what he witnessed was made on the Earth and that the propulsion might be anti-gravity, but he doesn't know. And when Bob Lazar was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the sport model that I mentioned earlier, which was his name for that craft, right? He says, no question in my mind, that's the way the craft operated. It's the exact same propulsion system. And this isn't crazy because he was describing that propulsion system 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was even saying, like, when it is moving, like at slow speeds, it sort of has a weird wobble to it, which is now in UFO lore. We've all seen those movements. But that was back then when
no one had really seen that.
Yeah, it's like George Lucas making it up. He's like saying those lightsabers, and then all of a sudden there's lightsabers everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? It's like kind of like that.
It's like if we had hoverboards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but imagine if Robert Zemeckis, director of Back to the Future, he had hoverboards in this movie, and then all of a sudden hoverboards are made in the same way, using the same parts.
Right.
It's just same mechanics, same way they filmed them. Mm-hmm. Very lucky if you're going to predict something, I have to say.
Right, and if you're going to put your whole reputation on it.
Exactly. So if you talk to a guy named Lou Elizondo, we've talked about him before. He's the former director of ATIP, which was a program that didn't fucking exist, right, for many years.
ATIP?
ATIP.
Just a tip.
Thank you. Nice. He ran this Pentagon group, and they were actually, trying to determine the physics of UFOs. How, when we get these sightings, can they achieve the impossible? That was one of his mission statements as the director of ATIP. He says that the military came to believe that the craft relied on special meta materials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. And decades ago, that was what Bob Lazar was saying. And that's not that crazy a prediction. They're using stuff that we don't even know about, right? But what's wild is that the Pentagon appears to be echoing the same exact thing now, right? The study of UFOs did not end in 1969 with Project Blue Book. That was a lie. And it was an admitted lie by our own Pentagon. This is what Jeremy Corbell is relaying about this particular topic. We are living in a world where it's understood that there are craft technologically advanced from an unknown origin that are performing maneuvers that far exceed human technology. And it's been going on a long time, and our government has been studying it. And by the way, a lot of that I just described is from CBS 8 News. They're called the I-Team. They've been doing a lot in the state of Nevada about this particular topic. Like Roswell obviously originated around here, and they've been doing a lot for that, so I want to credit to them. But what's fascinating about this is that you have the Pentagon basically saying, yeah, we made this stuff up. We said that was closed. We said that we stopped investigating it. There's nothing there. But then they keep investigating it. They keep on apportioning funds towards it. They keep on using black money to fund this stuff. And then we keep on doing budgets, and we can't find what the hell is going on and where the money's going. So it's such an unsexy topic that they keep on closing the book on it, but they keep on reopening it and like burying the books even deeper.
Right.
That's the part that blows my mind, but we're about to go even deeper on this. So if you remember, there was a New York Times article in December of 2017 called Glowing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program. So they say in the $600 billion annual Defense Department budgets, the $22 million spent on the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, was almost impossible to find. Now, why? It's a bogus program. They're looking into stuff that's they're looking into.
They're saying it's not real.
Yeah, they're looking at fucking cookies flying through the air and going like, "Oh no, it's just a kid threw a cookie and took a picture of it."
Yeah,
right. That actually happened. Like stuff like that. Well, they were throwing like fucking saucers, right? They were taking pictures of flies, right? Stuff like that. And then people going, "See, it's debunked." But if you want to debunk a topic, you push that to the top of the stack so that everyone ignores what's under it, in my opinion. So, and the way that they buried this ATIP program is exactly how the Pentagon wanted it. For years, the program, and this is per the New York Times, For years, the program investigated reports of identified flying objects, according to Defense Department officials, interviews with program participants, and records obtained by the New York Times. It was run by a military intelligence official named Lou Elizondo on the 5th floor of the Pentagon C ring, deep within the building's maze. The Defense Department has never before acknowledged the existence of the program, which it says it shut down in 2012. But this program actually, and parts of it, remain classified, right? But it began in 2007. And initially, it was largely funded at the request of Harry Reid, who we've spoken about before as well, the Nevada Democrat who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, who long had an interest in space phenomena. Most of the money went to an aerospace research company run by a billionaire entrepreneur and longtime friend of Mr. Reid's named Robert Bigelow, who's currently working with NASA and Tesla, SpaceX, to produce expandable craft for humans to use in space, inflatable aircraft that they've actually deployed using SpaceX's Dragon program. So they now have deployable aircraft using inflatable technology that they can use to potentially build space stations or...
Inflatable technology?
Yes.
Like a balloon?
Like a balloon or like a fucking pool toy. But it's advanced stuff. It's like it can withstand a lot more. And they just deployed one of them using a SpaceX rocket, Dragon rocket.
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago. So it's been successful. This guy, Robert Bigelow, is not just a quack.
Right.
He's not just some asshole. This is the guy they were giving all this money to. And you know what he says on CBS's 60 Minutes? He said he's absolutely convinced that aliens exist and that UFOs have visited the Earth and they are right under our nose. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what the hell he meant by that.
Yeah, that's so mysterious.
That's what I'm saying. And we will be RB. Buy whatever we tell you to buy, but we didn't tell you to buy anything. So support the show.
There you go.
Patreon.com/Sticky. Thank you.
It's a long segue. Hey, thanks for listening to our podcast. We just want to take a break to tell you to thanks for listening to our podcast, and if you want to rate it, that would be really awesome for us.
Listen, we're on break. We're not talking to you like podcast hosts right now. We're just talking to you like people.
As a friend.
And we just want to say, please rate the show because it helps out huge amounts.
We're not desperate. We're kind of desperate.
We're giving shout outs right now to all the people who are giving it ratings. So huge shout out right now to Brian Jorgensen. That was sick of you, dude. Thank you. God bless. Huge shout out right now to Mark W. in Springfield, Connecticut.
Back to our podcast.
Jenny Blyke.
Hey, back to our podcast.
In Tuscany,
and
Florida.
Back to our podcast.
God bless you. Thank you.
Steven.
Thank you for supporting the show. Welcome back. Thank you so much. So when George Knapp, who is a famous Nevada journalist on this particular topic, he broke the Bob Lazar story. You know, Mr. Bigelow, he says this to a CBS interview lady named Laura Logan. And he's like, yeah, they're right under our noses. And this clip gets replayed like hundreds of thousands of times. It's all over the place. But nobody asked him what the hell he meant. And George Knapp actually had a follow-up interview with him. And he says, hey, what the hell did you mean by that? And I have to say...
You mean parallel dimension. Go ahead.
Oh, please. You think it's parallel dimension stuff?
Maybe.
So I have to say, when it comes to investigative journalism and what I expect, and if I actually had Robert Bigelow on, which I think he's up there now on my list of guests, because he's actually a Las Vegas local.
Yeah.
He made his fortune in Las Vegas.
He definitely wants to come on Shit They Don't Tell You.
I would think he would. But it was a very unsatisfying and vague answer.
Okay.
He says that, being, quote, he says there's a couple ways to look at this. Quote, from a hardware standpoint is one way to look at it. So you're seeing craft and you're just going, that exists. I can't explain it. He says the other is from the presence standpoint of ET or extraterrestrials. A lot of people say whether they're hybrids or some other kind of human look-alike, you can look at them from a lot of different ways. That's a quote. And I don't really quite know what he means.
Look at
other
them
than
from a lot of different ways.
He says they're under our noses.
Yeah.
Maybe they're amongst us and they look like us, or they can at least,
shapeshift,
amalgamate themselves. Yeah, shapeshift. But that's what he said. I watched the interview. I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, George Knapp, he's going to get to the bottom of it. That's all we got.
That's all we got.
But we have to be transparent. Doesn't support the narrative. Makes him seem a little cuckoo bananas, a little bit. But I don't know that it like discounts him at all because they gave him shitloads of money.
I just don't understand why he didn't go more into detail.
That's what I'm saying. And he even says, like, you could look at from various sources and, like, there's all this stuff. And I'm like, cool. Why don't you just tell us?
Yeah, tell us.
Just tell us.
And then tell us the sources that back it up. Well, the whistleblower was talking about the overlapping dimensions that might be, like, they're on our same Earth or plane or whatever, but they're just, or they're on the Earth, but they're on a plane that we can't see. And that to me like was interesting because I know there's always been speculation of paranormal stuff like ghosts and demons and stuff being related to alien stuff. And I mean, if there's some people that can see other, see or claim to see like through different dimensions that are overlapping, and that's like the ghost world or whatever. And like most of us can't see it, so we're like, okay, whatever. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is like, if you look into UFO lore, which I, have dug down a rabbit hole or two before.
A little bit.
But there's different alien civilizations. It's not just like one species. There's shape-shifting that they say, and this is not me, but this is like
the Greys, the reptilians.
So the reptilian ones are the ones that can shapeshift, and they try to get jobs in media. Like that's the one where, and so like conspiracy people are always trying to like catch them like shape-shifting on TV and stuff.
But I saw Beyonce's eyes do that a couple times.
See, but so I think that's the one that like if you're gonna allude to shape-shifting or whatever, I think it's like there's different species of aliens that people have talked about throughout UFO history.
Yes. And there's a rule too. Like if they can't be filmed unless your elbow gets bumped while you're filming them, and then like so you see their eyes start to move, but then like the camera dips out of frame completely, goes to the floor, and then goes back up to them.
Yeah. That's the rule. It's in their writer.
Tell me about it. And by the way, whoever's filming it is so fucking nervous that they're seeing a lizard for the first time. They're shaking nonstop. They can't stop shaking like they're in when we were in Sweden when we went to the ice bar.
Yeah.
Shivering.
So one of my friends said that her friend was at a music festival, and there was a girl that claimed to be an alien that she was talking to, and she's like, yeah, I'm an alien. She's like, yeah, right. And then she shapeshifted into something very indistinguishable,
like a coffee table?
No, like something that we have never seen, indistinguishable.
I've never seen someone turn into a coffee table.
No, but like she turned into something that we've never seen before. So like I can't even explain. So then she said that she just did it really quickly and then turned back and was like, no one will believe you, basically. And then the girl was like, why do you even come here? And she said that it was like a vacation for them, And then
I was afraid of that.
And then I asked my friend, were there drugs at this festival? And my friend said, yes, there were.
Hell yes, there were.
So take it as you will.
So good. That's incredible.
Yeah. You're welcome for that story.
By the way, that's from the New York Times.
Yeah, that's from the New York Times.
That story's from the New York Times. In case you were being a hater for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so check this out. Summer of 2020. A New York Times reporter talks to Eric Davis, an astrophysicist who worked as a subcontractor and then consultant for the Pentagon UFO program since 2007. And he says that in some cases, examination of the materials had so far failed to determine their source and led him to conclude we couldn't make it ourselves. Mm-hmm. So this is not Bob Lazar, not David Grosh, right? Mm-hmm. This is an astrophysicist who talked to the New York Times about this stuff, right? He also says he's briefed by many people in the U.S. government, including U.S. senators. So this is, again, 2020, 3 years before Mr. Grosh's claims last June. Mr. Davis, who now works for Aerospace Corporation, a defense contractor, said he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency as recently as March about retrievals, quote, listen to me here, look at me, from off-world vehicles not made on this earth. That was his briefing. And if you remember...
And who is he?
He is an aerospace astrophysicist.
Okay.
Who worked as a subcontractor and then a consultant for the Pentagon UFO program.
Okay.
and now he works for a defense contractor. He says these are off-world vehicles not made on this earth. I talked about this when this article came out from the New York Times in 2020 on this freaking show.
Hey.
So putting it all together is wild.
Yeah.
And so that's okay. So go back, 30 years. Bob Lazar is saying those craft here, we can't explain it. They told me they're from some star system. That might be a psyop. I don't know if they're fucking telling me the truth.
Yeah.
But they sure don't know how the hell they work because they brought me here to try to reverse engineer this shit.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone was trying to do. But they compartmentalized everything so much we couldn't talk to each other. Real science wasn't really being done. It was more like military fucking bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. So Mr. Davis, going back to today, subcontractor, he says he also gave classified briefings on retrievals of the unexplained objects to staff members of the Senate Armed Service Committee on October 21st, 2019, and to staff members of the Senate Intelligence Committee 2 days later. So it's not that crazy to see these Congress people coming out and believing Mr. Grouch because they've been briefed on this stuff in private. Mm-hmm. And whenever they say like, I would like to talk to you, in like a different place about this, they're talking about classified information. So Mr. Grouch, people like to clown on him, say, why don't you just say he's saying shit that, he's saying like shit that he heard from somebody else. Most of it is he's saying he's heard shit from somebody else to protect his fucking ass.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't want to come out there and say something that's classified. You have to say it as hearsay so that you're not talking about classified information. And if you want to talk about classified information to Congress people, you have to take it aside. You can't do it in an open hearing. Former Nevada Senator Harry Reid, who has long been talking about exploring UFOs, told the New York Times he believes the U.S. government has alien materials in its possession, and perhaps more disturbingly, he also believes the people in the private sector have these materials as well. He says, after looking into this, I came to the conclusion that there were reports, some were substantive, some not so substantive, that there were actual materials that the government and the private sector had in their possession, he told the Times.
I believe that.
Are you ready to hear the correction?
Sure.
An earlier version of this article inaccurately rendered remarks attributed to Harry Reid, the retired Senate Majority Leader from Nevada. Mr. Reid said he believed that crashes of objects of unknown origin may have occurred and that retrieved materials should be studied. He did not say that crashes had occurred and that retrieved materials had been studied secretly for decades.
That's quite a different story.
Right? Isn't that funny, though? The sensationalist one is the one that went everywhere. The correction, nobody picked up on.
Yeah, but also, is it a save your ass correction?
Well, that's the big thing, right? That's the big quandary. But the correction was made, and all we can do is speculate.
I'm always going to play devil's advocate, whether it's for the skeptics or for the believers. And
but let's be real. You and me are going to go for the believers.
Well, there's a lot of weird shit, and I don't like when there's a whole bunch of secrecy around it. It's so suspect. I also I don't trust the CIA at all. So if that makes me a conspiracy theorist at all, go for it, because there's just a whole operation they did where was Operation Paperclip, where they wanted everything the American public to believe to be false, or Mockingbird.
Mockingbird, yes.
Yeah.
Mockingbird.
Operation Mockingbird.
Paperclip was more serious than that. Paperclip was like they tried to nuke the fucking atmosphere or some shit.
Okay, I'm thinking about Project Mockingbird, where they literally said their whole point was to make the American public believe things that weren't true.
If you turn on the TV today, it's a bunch of ex-CIA, FBI guys on TV.
Yeah.
But that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
What Nikki just said is conspiracy
theory. Did you watch Skinwalker Ranch?
I tried to, but I fell asleep.
Yeah, I didn't watch the very end of it, but I watched most of the last episode. And so first of all, they found there was materials that they've never seen before. It was picture aluminum foil, very thin aluminum foil looking material, but if you crinkle it, it just goes right back to its original form. And you can't burn it, penetrate it, you can't rip it, can't do anything with it, but it just it's indestructible, right? And then
so that vids of this?
So that's weird. What?
Do they have videos of this?
Yeah.
Nice.
And then there was this balloon that they sent up because there's a lot of weird shit that goes on in this area. I mean, there's a lot to explain. Go watch Skinwalker Ranch. They did a whole like different seasons of it and stuff too. But it's this place that in Utah that keeps getting investigated because all this weird shit happens there, like alien shit and like weird paranormal shit. Like they think like shapeshifter shit. Lots of stories, and that there's like native tribes that have lived there forever, and they like have a bunch of stories of crafts coming out of the mesa, like not just like under or whatever, but actually goes into the mesa and like comes out of the mesa. And then they got that on video of like whole formations coming out of a craft comes out and then it splits into different formations. So that's weird. And then they're like, okay, well, let's dig into the mesa. So they take this huge drill and it hits something and they can't penetrate it. And like they go like forever, they're drilling forever and can't penetrate it. Take the drill out and the drill looks like it hasn't even been touched.
Oh.
Like it has no wear or tear on it at all. And so then they did these like, I forget what they're called, like sonogram. I forget what they're called, like infrared type of thing to see what was in the ground. And there's like a whole metal tunnel system, and this would have happened. This has been untouched for thousands of years, or at least 1,000 years. So there's like this whole huge double football field size tunnel systems with rooms attached to each one, and it's all like within there, and they can't get in there.
Okay, rest easy. Shit they don't tell you, listeners. We will investigate this.
They sent a weather balloon up and it
crashed.
No, it came back with their time being half a second or a quarter second. I can't remember, but it might have been a quarter second into the future, which like it was a quarter second delay, which Albert Einstein and a bunch of other notable scientists said that it could be the sign of a wormhole. And like that's never been seen before. That's like unprecedented. That
clearly,
like that, because it's a really big chunk of time.
Doc Brown with Einstein sent, Einstein into the future, the dog.
Yeah.
And then with a clock around his neck, same kind of jam.
Yeah, exactly. So that happened at Skinwalker Ranch.
Wow.
Oh, there's a lot of weird shit there, and like the whole, like the mayor and everyone's and all the politicians and everyone's around, and everyone that they hired has like continued to have a vested interest in it.
Love it. We're going to look into this. We will report it to all of you. But the
materials, I was just thinking about how like the aluminum that like doesn't crinkle and stuff.
Yeah. What do you think about, so zooming out on this particular topic, right? Mm-hmm. Bob Lazar just completely makes up a story. That's what people allege. He dummied his credentials. He would never worked at Los Alamos. They never had any fucking confirmation that he was at anywhere that he said he was.
Yeah.
But if you remember, he actually told everyone about Area 51 before it was ever acknowledged.
Yeah, he's the reason people know about Area 51.
Correct.
Also, when he went there and filmed with a camera
at Los Alamos,
the janitor knew who he was.
Everyone knew who he was.
Everyone knew who he was.
Per George Knapp. He said that everyone knew who he was, and Bob knew exactly where the hell he was going in the facility. He knew where everything was. And they actually found his name on the phone records list, like he had worked there.
Yeah.
Like almost like he had worked there. Right.
Yeah. So what does that say? It means that they
scrubbed him.
They do. Exactly.
They scrubbed him.
So to like just pretend like this doesn't exist, like how you can just write someone off and say, see, they're not credible because they never worked there. Actually, it was debunked and blah, blah, blah.
Debunked.
Like as if this shit doesn't happen.
I know.
As if that's the most basic shit that they can do to cover up something. And you just don't believe that they can do it.
Yeah, but the fact that he went back there and they were all acknowledging him.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like clearly,
some crazy guy.
Clearly he worked there.
Yeah.
But people don't believe that the government will scrub records or whatever. Like, I just think there's way too much trust
people
out there.
People don't believe that the government will cover something up. That's the wildest thing.
That's the wildest thing to me.
They literally get called out for covering shit up all the time.
All the time.
And yet everyone just goes, well, they stopped doing that.
Or they go,
it's like the CIA is good guys now.
No, actually the CIA said that wasn't true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like whoa, wow, really?
We had nothing to do with Kennedy. We can't release all the files about it. You got to trust us. And also, why don't you trust us?
Yeah.
We need to gaslight you for a while.
Exactly.
Why aren't you trusting us? You guys are not very trustworthy, actually.
Kind of abusive.
A husband gets caught with titties on his phone, and he's like, why don't you fucking trust me?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that was from an old thing. And I don't do that
your titties,
anymore.
babe. Those are your titties, babe. You don't need to see him because you trust me, right? Okay. So now Bob Lazar also says, again, 30 years ago, that there are back engineering UFO programs, and he was part of one of them, and that they're in possession of many, many craft. That's something that has now been confirmed by a top U.S. intelligence official. And no one's like,
yeah, where's
hey,
where's the vindication?
Hey, good for Bob. He made that shit up 30 years ago. What a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But I guess a broken watch is right many times a day.
Yeah, many times.
Many times.
That's the saying.
Yep. He also, described gravity waves as the method they use to travel at amazing speeds. And I think that is consistent with what we have seen with these videos that have come out. Like you got the Tic Tac UFO. David Fravor sees it. He says all of a sudden, it's gone, and then it travels 90 miles away, and it's just immediately there. Mm-hmm. And how the hell is that possible? Like for anything that exists right now. So Bob Lazar is talking about shit that, this is more, I'm stretching a little bit here, obviously. Mm-hmm. But to me, this just sort of like, it's another thing where it's like, yeah, Bob Lazar was saying this stuff was possible like 30 years ago.
Right.
And everyone said he's a quack job. Mm-hmm. Like attention whore quack job. So hopefully, people open their minds to this topic a little bit more, even though, it's being acknowledged more than I've ever seen it be acknowledged ever. But like I said, the smears have come in. Mr. Gauch, his intelligence, his sanity is being questioned.
But don't you think that, so there's two skeptics in me. So one, there's the one that's like, I don't fucking trust the government, blah, blah, blah. So like, yeah, if they're trying to say like aliens ain't real, then they're real, right? And look at all this evidence. But then I also don't trust the government that like, how do we know this isn't just controlled opposition?
Yeah, they're not trying to get to the bottom of it. They're trying to portray something.
And they're putting it out there.
Right.
Like if you have a controlled opposition, it's like helping promote the same agenda, basically. Of what if they're gonna introduce aliens, quote unquote, to the world to bring us together, to unite under, I don't know, a new world order of a one world government.
Talk about another CIA program, Project Bluebeam, where they were going to fake a UFO attack and alien landing in order to influence the public.
That's exactly it. So how do we know that that's not going to happen? And it seems to be talked about way more in the mainstream right now. CNN did a live stream of this on YouTube. Like you could watch them talking about all this alien stuff. So clearly they're not trying to sweep it under the rug anymore and go like, that's not real, that's not real, that's not real. They're actually like entertaining the notions of this and putting it in the spotlight. Yeah. And so whenever that happens, I'm like, why are they letting it go onto mainstream media? And it feels like a little bit of controlled opposition, maybe, where they're going to then say, okay, you got us, aliens is real, and then they release fake aliens.
Well, if you look, being somewhat familiar with disinformation campaigns, one of the biggest moves that they do is they do two truths and a lie. So they'll give you, a piece of a story that's true, and they'll give you some bullshit about a story, so you go report on it. And then, you had some of the truth, but now it all seems like bullshit because you said it. And you reported the false thing, and they're able to debunk the shit out of you. And now you're the person who reported the false thing. So even though you reported the true thing, it seems like bullshit. Which is why if you watch Independence Day, one of my favorite actors, Brent Spiner, Star Trek, Data, let's go, shout out. He's the mad scientist at Area 51. And remember, the president says, we don't have anything like that. And they go, actually, sir, it's not exactly true. And if you zoom a little bit forward in time, Barack Obama takes presidency, and guess what the first thing he asks for is? He says, tell me about the alien situation. And you know what he says? He says, I sent some people to look into it, and it turns out not the case. But here we are now in 2023. And that is not the case is not looking so good.
Every president has asked about aliens since, Bill Clinton asked.
Yep. Clinton was the first that I'm aware of that in the modern era.
Yeah.
Eisenhower, there's a lot of reports about Eisenhower and having actually had some kind of contact with whoever the fuck it is, this ancient species
Or because they wanted to stop the nuclear...
Potentially.
Yeah, but
we don't know.
That's the story. I'm just saying the story.
Yeah. But in the modern era, Clinton was the first one. He's like, I came in, I said, what's up with aliens? And they said...
It's good Clinton
and
impression.
they said, oh, we looked into it, but there's nothing. There ain't nothing.
Yeah, all of the presidents say that.
Right?
Donald Trump wanted to reignite the space program.
Yeah, but Donald Trump, you know what's funny about Trump? He'll tell you everything. He'll tell you everything. He's like, you know why we go to the wars? We take the oil. We take the oil. We take it. But then guess what he says on aliens? I'm not a big alien guy. You know what that tells me? They just didn't tell him.
Yeah.
They didn't tell him shit. They didn't trust him.
Or he's just not a big... Or he's just not interested. He's not a big alien guy.
They told him and he's like, I'm not a big alien guy.
I don't care.
They're like, sir, we're with all the intelligence communities. He's like, I'm not a big alien guy. Yeah, look, I hear what you're saying. I'm just not a big into it. I'm not into it.
You didn't really do a good Obama impression. Can you go back and tell me what Obama said about?
That's all I got. I can't. I can't talk.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you.
You can't talk.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't talk.
We have seen alien.
Sometimes,
George Bush.
Sometimes, I asked Iraq. Yeah, that's all I got.
That's good. You did good.
Thank you.
I like it. I appreciate the president impression.
Thank you. Working on it. Who do you think my next impression is going to be?
Robert F. Kennedy.
I don't think I could do it because it's too mean.
Yeah.
Because he hates his own voice because it's all constricty.
Because of the thing.
Yeah. But then, Biden, I would need probably 16 square feet because I'd have to do physical comedy if I want to do a good impression.
You just go ahead and take a nap.
Yeah, no, I'd trip and fall for sure.
And then take a nap.
Fall down some stairs and take a nap, yeah. That's why I say it to people. I'm like, Trump was one of our funniest presidents, like when he says things.
Yeah.
And Biden's probably the funniest physical comedian we've ever had.
I actually continuously forget who's president because of Biden being president. I continuously forget that he's actually the president.
By the way,
he's been president for 4 years.
This is as political as we get. It's surfacey, jokey.
Yeah, I don't like politics at all.
We're not into it
at all. I'll discuss topics, but I don't really do party politics. But no, I genuinely just fucking forget that he.
I know.
Is the president. Well, because Donald Trump was so splashy.
He was.
So he was everywhere and everyone's talking about him all the time.
They still are.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I always forget that that Biden's the president. I hear people and they talk about him falling over and stuff all the time and different part I've
never seen a man fall upstairs. That's one of the first. Falling upstairs is crazy. I've seen guys fall downstairs my whole life.
And his lifts on or he had tap shoes on or something like that.
He definitely had. Yeah, he definitely had some Fred Munster, some Herman Munsters.
I don't really know. I just see the memes on Twitter. I don't.
Same.
Yeah.
I don't know what's real.
I don't keep up with stuff.
But I will say that a meme is real.
The meme is definitely real, and there are many species of memes because of the meme farmers.
Exactly.
Cross-pollinating memes.
We got the Greys.
Are you talking about alien species?
No, I'm talking about the memes.
Oh.
The species.
The Greys.
Yep.
The Palladians.
Exactly.
Reptilians.
Thank you. Those are all the different species of memes.
Yeah. Those are all the meme species.
Yep. That's all.
Yeah.
And that's all the time we have for today.
So thanks for listening. We believe Bob Lazar.
Deal with it.
We've been Bob Lazar.
And suck it.
Yeah. Suck it hard.
Suck it as hard as you can.
Literally suck it so hard.
Yeah. We don't care.
I made Steve a shirt one of I don't know, it was the early years of our relationship.
The first 2 years.
Yeah, I made him a shirt with Bob Lazar on it.
This is I believe Bob Lazar. That's my favorite. I love that shirt.
Yeah, it's great.
She's the best.
Anyway, check out our Patreon if you want to support the show. We really appreciate you. And thanks for watching and sharing with your friends. Patreon.com/sticky, STIKKI. I'll leave the link in the description. And
you get the show a day early. I do Crypto Corner every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We go deep on the crypto markets. And
really just supports the show.
Nothing supports the show more. We appreciate you guys so much. Good night.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.